Deputy Minister, I do see that one apology that I've seen, which I will clarify.
Chairperson, the Deputy Minister just sent a message that due to unforeseen circumstances, she'll be late to this meeting. And the Minister will be here. I don't see her yet, but she will leave early from this meeting, the Minister. And we have an apology for a member, Mr. Madisha.
Okay. So those are the apologies we have.
Yes, Chair, just to add, I just received a call from Mr. Pambo, is also apologizing.
Oh, yes, so Honorable Pambo also has apologized, but we have got numbers to proceed. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can I also just table an apology for Honourable Van Dam? She's not feeling well this morning. Thank
Not
you.
well. We'll take note of that. Which means that, honourable members, we can then proceed with the meeting. Let me officially open the meeting. This is the Portfolio Committee meeting to consider what has been circulated to members in the notice convening meeting. Really to get briefing by some turnaround strategy, as well as that relates to SASSA and other matters that SAPO handles. I know that in the notice would also be handling the minute. I think depending on how we go with the meeting, I'll make a ruling on that matter later. So, honorable members, South Africans who are following us on different platforms, the SAPO delegation, I was trying to confirm that it's still led by the acting chair. So I saw on the platform, it would appear that she's already logged in. But we'll just get confirmation if the minister has been able to join the meeting, because as it is the norm, would give the minister an opportunity to address the committee, which also presents an opportunity for her to take the committee into confidence, especially on matters that may be in the public domain, so that the committee is also at one in understanding, but also help to respond adequately from an informed position. But if the minister has not joined the meeting yet, understanding that she would also leave at some point, would give
There's a notice from the minister.
Yes, I see that.
Experiencing problems.
Okay, I see that from Millicent. But I'm just saying that in the way we would handle the meeting is such that if she joins, because there's no indication at what point the minister would leave, members would maybe agree with me that would give an opportunity to speak. After speaking, if there are clarity questions that members have, we engage it immediately, so that by the time the minister would have to get to another commitment, members would have had an opportunity to engage with the minister. In the absence of the minister for now, all I would ask would be that would have a presentation from SAPO. I'm not sure because I can't see clearly from this site, just to check whether it is going to be the entity oversight or is it going to be acting DG, so I can't see the We will then do just the introduction and allow the chair of the board to speak. Given that the members would have heard the presentations, including the updated presentation. Mute your mic, Mirosi. Mute your mic. I will then, in that way, allow 45 minutes was really meant to be between the minister and SAPO, because members have received the presentation, including the updated presentation. So that is really how we would have wanted to approach the discussion, which would leave 2 hours and 15 minutes to the actual engagement by the committee on the presentation. So as you already heard, members, the minister is still having connection challenges. Once that is sorted, we'll get an indication. May I just check if it will be the department, whether it's the acting DG, or it would be from the entity oversight, but we'll allow the department to just do opening and allow the SAPO board in the 45 minutes. As I said, one would have estimated an engagement also with the minister. If the board chair and the team could really share in 25 minutes, highlight real issues on the presentation, not on a point by point, so that we still have about 20 minutes in case the minister connects as you are continuing with presentation, and then we allow and then get to engage from that point. Honorable members, just for the smooth running of our meetings, it's always important to remind ourselves of the rules of engagement in meetings as provided for. That for all our guests, which includes members, please make sure that your mic is muted if you are not speaking at the time. Of course, would appreciate that those who speak do switch their video cameras on, so that those that are following the discussions could also attach the face to the speaker. But of course, where people experience connection problems, we will understand when they make requests that they switch off their video cameras so as to maximize the bandwidth on their side. So that's, I think, an important matter. The same as it relates to the speakers, you speak to the chairperson, meaning that you'll be recognized to speak and be allowed to speak. The same applies to the point of order for the smooth running of the meeting. Indicate that you would want to raise order, you get recognized. And once that is done, you'll be having an opportunity to speak. That helps us to run our meetings smoothly in that way. So having said that, honorable members, I would now check if the department would want to speak first so that they introduce SAPO to do the presentation. As I said, I'll look at about 25 minutes.
Chairperson, the minister connected.
Okay, so the minister is connected. All right, no, thanks, Hajira. Welcome you, Honorable Minister. We understood that you were having connection challenges, but we have also received your apology. committee, because we do not know at what point you would leave the meeting, would have agreed that after your presentation, if members have got clarities to ask, would give that immediately, so that when the presentation from the board and its team continues and it happens that we have to leave, at least those matters would have been clarified with yourself, Honorable Minister. So that's where we are, and I take it that the Minister would be ready to be welcomed to the platform and be able to speak to the committee. And we'll therefore introduce some thereafter. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Am I audible, members?
Yes, Chair, you are audible enough.
Yes, we can hear you, Honorable Manele.
Perfect.
Yes, Honorable Siva, not you. But I wanted to be sure that given what was said, there's connection problems earlier, whether the minister would have heard the point so that we then allow the minister to come in if she's ready to get in now.
Thank you, Chairperson. With your permission, good morning to all the honorable members and the participants in the meeting. Chairperson, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Portfolio Committee for affording us an opportunity to join the South African Post Office, which is an entity reporting to the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Chairperson, the team as represented by the board, led by the Director General of the department, will get into the specifics of the work that we're about to present to yourselves. Just to highlight a few issues, Chairperson, in relation to the subject matter that the SAPO will be presenting to the Portfolio Committee. Just to take us back to say, we are aware that Post Office has not been performing very well. The financial challenges that they've gone through, the instability in terms of leadership, the money that has been injected by government in order to make sure that they implement the turnaround strategy. Chairperson, these matters have come before the Portfolio Committee, and the board has tried to work on the corporate strategy, which was presented, including interventions in terms of the turnaround that they believe that would assist change the status quo. Last year, Chairperson, as part of the reconfiguration of the portfolio that I am given responsibility for, we then made an announcement, which is what we had tabled in the budget vote, to say we will be reconfiguring even the entities that must be responsive to the department's mandate. And we made mention of the separation of the post office and the post bank. We also spoke to the issue of making sure that we digitize post office to make sure that they become the logistics hub in driving the e-commerce that we spoke about. This has been at the center, Chairperson and members. You will remember again in March this year, before we went for lockdown, I then issued the ministerial directives that SAPO will be responsible for certain aspects that we needed to be responded to in relation to COVID, and therefore they remain an essential service. Honourable members and Chairperson, I'm very pleased to say they did very well actually during that time. More than 1 million plus parcels were delivered by post office, and we've had positive response to those that were relying on them despite the challenges that we were experiencing, but at least there's work that was done efficiently. I'm making reference to this, Chairperson, because as we talk about the components, the turnaround strategy and the areas of growth in post office mail, although in the reports it has been mentioned that mail is one that is going down or not increasing in revenue, but practically when we look at the reports, mail has been the one that's sustaining post office, actually is the one that's doing well more than the courier and others. And therefore the STP that is being presented as we play our oversight role we'll have to look into those areas where we think where there's growth, we must just improve on the service and attend to that our customers are not happy about as they complain about certain things. Of course, this also talks to us ensuring that we instill that culture of excellence from the post office in order to make sure that we regain the trust and confidence of the customers that we have. And amongst those, of course, is ensuring that we have efficient systems and processes and taking into consideration key projects that are just intervention, not the core business of post office, to say, how do we, whilst we're trying to address the challenges and the repurposing the post office, how do we attend to the special projects that have been given to us? And the chairperson and the management that just brought will be talking to those. Chairperson and honorable members, once more, you may have realized, as you said, I can take the portfolio committee to conference in matter of the issues that have also been in the public domain. Since the removal of the then acting CEO, Mr. Nongogo, by the board since wrote a letter to me to request that from our side as the department, we help by providing an acting CEO. And we had responded, hence we see Mr. Renelu Langa, who's the acting CEO, seconded to post office as per their request. The board will talk to those. We had filled again the position of the CFO, which has been vacant for too long as we try to stabilize the post office. We have filled in the vacancies that were due to resignation by some members of the post office board. Hence, we have Ms. Tia, who's the acting chairperson, and we have the new acting deputy chairperson, Mr. Majombozi, who's there. Chairperson, these interventions are meant to ensure that the stability at leadership level, that at all times must ensure that it plays this crucial role in terms of providing that strategic leadership and guidance to the management of post office that must undertake its own responsibilities accordingly and turn around the post office as per the guidance of the board that remains the eyes and ears of the shareholder representative. Chairperson, I spoke to those issues. I would allow, Chairperson, on other matters that affect post office, I would allow the board to update the committee on those. I am saying this, Chairperson, because these are matters mainly that would say the minister has done this to the post office, the minister this and that to the post office. So because they are here, I think it is fair that the honorable members hear it from them rather than the person accused of the matters that have been reported to in the media. I must again give confidence to the members that we have started off very well with the board, and we are going to continue with our active role of providing oversight. As I said, one of the things as we repurpose is to ensure that post office retains or improves its financial sustainability and plays the role it's supposed to play, and therefore it fulfills the strategic intent whilst looking at the socio-economic impact of why we established the entity. Chairperson, allow me to thank you for giving us the opportunity and to say, with your permission, I would like to hand over to them so that they can talk to the matters if that is allowed. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. As I said when you were joining the meeting, because we were not quite sure at what point you would leave the meeting, so that if you are to leave quite early, maybe before SAPO completes its presentation, it was to give members an opportunity to ask clarity questions on what you would have presented. But if you will still be available immediately after the presentation, will then give members opportunity to clarify, and you can respond so that by the time you have to leave, it's not a matter that there was no opportunity given for members to engage with the minister. if you can just give guidance on that, Minister.
Chairperson, with your permission, if you can allow them to present. I'm only leaving at 11. I believe they would be done with the presentations, then I'll respond to the questions.
Okay, no, thanks, Minister. I think that's understandable, members, because the Minister would have indicated in a presentation that some of the matters raised in the public domain may be better explained by the board itself as the board presents. And we'll take up a discussion at that point. May I then allow the board to present in the way they would have planned the presentation, but taking into account the time that we allocated to them. Please, if you take us up to 10, I would say at that point whether we can still give you extra 5 minutes or so. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Welcome to all the honourable members. Welcome, Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. I just would like to give some context before we forget that the world was in lockdown. All over the world, there were empty highways, shops closed, people confined to their houses. And South Africa was not immune to that. In a bid to save lives and get the healthcare system ready for the potential influx of patients, most economic activity, apart from essential services, were halted. Just as South Africa was not immune to the economic impact, so too SAPO was not immune. The pandemic has devastated the financial situation of SAPO. Estimations are that major economies will lose at least 2.4% of their GDP. We have seen it in our revenue numbers that during Q1, we could not even cover our salary bill. We are seeing it in slow recovery of revenue, where we have not reached pre-COVID numbers. COVID has not left the building. We are aware that if the citizens let their guard down, we can very well see a repetition of the lockdown phases. That results in additional costs to be incurred to protect our staff and customers in the form of PPEs, which adds to the burden of the bottom line. Amidst all of this, SAPO has seen an influx of negative media articles in the last couple of weeks. It has the hallmark of disgruntled individuals that are feeding information out of context to media houses, and the media houses don't always publish SAPO's responses in its entirety, or sometimes don't even request a response. Some of these articles are written with a clear intention to create a potential crisis through panic with our beneficiaries that could have ended in a disaster should the beneficiaries have stormed the offices. With reference to the 2 billion tender allegation that the Minister referred to, I can confirm that no tender to that value have been presented to the board for approval. The key cornerstone to deliver this turnaround plan is to stabilize the executive management who will be held accountable for the execution of this plan. Minister has alluded to some of it. If I may just give the committee some feedback on other matters. So there's the COO. And as you would recall, the COO has been suspended following a whistleblower report. She has decided to take the matter to arbitration, and the outcome of that process were that SAPO, there's a twofold. So first of all, we were substantially fair in suspending Ms. Kwele, and that the board was well within its right to suspend her on the basis of the whistleblower report. The second matter in the arbitration was found that we were procedurally unfair. When Ms. Kwele was informed of the whistleblower report, she was given 48 hours to indicate why she should not be suspended. Since the then chairperson have not allowed the full 48 hours awarded to Ms. Kwele to pass before announcing the appointment of the then acting group CEO, Advocate Nongogo, the arbiter found the process to be procedurally unfair. With the arbitration process finalized, the disciplinary process will continue with haste on the COO matter. In terms of the Group CEO position, it is at an advanced stage with interviews and psychometric assessments concluded, and the results to be presented to the board for approval this evening. Thereafter, it will be submitted to the Minister. The Minister has indicated that the Group CFO has commenced his term on the 1st of October, and we believe that he will be instrumental in the execution of the turnaround plan. The turnaround plan was developed to address historical inefficiencies as well as build resilience in the post-COVID world. We are aware that this plan addresses a turnaround in the short term. However, it sets us up for building a sustainable business in the future with the required technological backbone to support digitization. This is a plan that allows SAPO to gain traction, and we will not see that it will wipe out our losses within the next year, but it will give resilience against the impact that COVID had and place us on the correct trajectory. I will now let the presenters provide clarity on the details within the turnaround plan. I hand over to the Acting Group CEO.
Good morning, committee members, Minister, DM, SAPO board present, and colleagues. I'm going to be taking you through the presentation on the turnaround plan, which was requested by the committee, and also to touch on the SASSA grants and high level on the SITA Collaboration. So in terms of the presentation that has been prepared for today, just by way of introduction, I just want to reiterate what the chairperson has indicated, that the plan itself is a plan just to help us to stabilize. But then we have acknowledged that SAPO does need a longer turnaround plan, which we will be working on in terms of making sure that when we work on the corporate plan for the next financial year, we can already incorporate the elements. So this is the plan as approved by the board in July 2020. And the key focus is basically on revenue generation, cost reduction, and some financial stability. So as we would be aware, SAPO has presented to the committee on the quarterly progress feedback. We have highlighted what the challenges were in terms of the financial challenges that the SAPO has been experiencing. So those challenges are still there. We prepared the presentation in a way that we don't have to repeat the presentation that was done last month with regard to the progress feedback. So just to provide context, I thought I should say so, to say it was indicated in the previous presentation by SAPO to the committee to say that due to the lockdown regulation, the performance of SAPO have deteriorated. And this current turnaround plan is basically a recovery plan that will assist SAPO while we work on the longer turnaround plan. So the challenges that we have highlighted previously in terms of the cash flow, those are still challenges currently. Where we have indicated that due to the cash flow situation, SAPO wasn't in a position to honor the statutory payments, and also with regard to the financial challenges as highlighted. So I thought I should reiterate that context for the benefit of the committee members. So with regard to the, we also thought of highlighting that obviously due to the cash flow situation that SAPO has been experiencing, there has been a situation where SAPO was not in a position to honor the commitments that were made in terms of the substantive agreement with labor. So as a result, we just want to highlight that we are currently engaging labor because obviously labor is aggrieved by the fact that SAPO was not able to honor those challenges. Mainly, it was due to the cash flow situation. So with regard to the presentation, I'm just going to touch on high level the challenges, which are not new in terms of the presentation that SAPO has made to the committee. These have been highlighted before, but it's just to give context to the turnaround plan. So with regard to the challenges, obviously there has been a sharp decline in the traditional mail volumes, even though this is the main contributor in terms of the revenue. And then we have highlighted challenges with regard to transport, logistic costs, cost of security, property holding, and maintenance cost escalation. So most of these challenges, we have highlighted them. And then when we go to the actual initiatives that are linked to the turnaround plan, it's attempting to address these challenges. And then the issue of inability to honor binding agreement with staff, we have highlighted mainly due to the cash flow situation, and also the unsettled liabilities and debts that impact on the business. And with regard to leadership stability, I wouldn't repeat. I think the chairperson and the minister have highlighted with regard to filling of the executive positions and also the board. So with regard to the strategic objectives of the turnaround plan, here we are looking at the key is to acquire funding so that the key initiative can be resourced. We have highlighted that SAPO has already made application to the National Treasury for funding. We have made applications through the MTF budget adjustment processes and also through the MTF process. Those results are still awaited. I'm actually on slide 7 of the presentation. With regard to the actual pillars of the turnaround plan, we are looking at the infrastructure collaboration. It's slide 8. In there, we are looking at launching owner management branch model, owner-driver model. So these are explained further in the presentation. This is just to highlight. And then with regard to the logistic business and recapitalization, here the purpose is basically to revive the capabilities of SAPO with regard to the logistic business, where we talk about the courier and logistics, which is aligned to SAPO's logistics strategy, and also looking at possibly combining the DOCX subsidiary with the courier business. And then we're also looking at delivery on demand, where we can develop a delivery platform as an aggregator for the owners of vehicles. This has to do also with improvements in terms of the delivery capability of SAPO. The digital modernization is actually linked to the whole objective of making SAPO more relevant in the digital era in terms of what programs SAPO can implement to make sure that we are relevant in the digital space. Hence, we talk about modernization of the traditional post office and relevance in the technology. The other pillar refers to the cash payment point model. This is given the high costs that are linked to the cash payment model, where there are security challenges. So we're looking at how can we improve in terms of improving the operations at the cash payment model, and also looking at, for example, how do we even introduce like the services in a way that we can be also modernized. I will cover this in detail later in the presentation itself. The government business is actually linked to the whole objective of, if SAPO has the strong logistic arm and the broad network infrastructure, how can we optimize that to deliver to the citizens the government services? This is also aligned to the ICT white paper in terms of positioning SAPO for the future. With regard to partial exemption to the PFMA, what we're looking at is how can we improve our procurement processes and procurement policies and SEM in a way that we can be more agile. and also look at what aspects of the PFMA we can request for exemption. This is not to request for blanket exemptions, but is how to harness our own procurement policies first to make the entity more agile. So this is in detail, just highlighting the next slide is to highlight what are the envisaged benefits when the turnaround strategy is implemented itself. So the first column is just reiterating the initiatives as highlighted in the introduction. And here are the envisaged potential benefits. For example, when we talk about the infrastructure collaboration model, the aim here is to reduce the operating costs and also to ensure that there's greater collaboration where we can collaborate with the private sector. And also on the logistic business itself, this is how do we regain our presence in the market, especially in the courier space, and also how can we scale up the logistic business capability of SAPO. I have touched on high level in terms of the delivery on demand, where the benefits, for example, is how do we reduce the last mile cost delivery. And the digital modernization, it's highlighted earlier as well. And then with regard to the cash payment model is actually to reduce the cost of distribution cash and to improve the service delivery and security at the cash payment points and also in our branches. So with regard to government business, this is where we are continuing to reposition SAPO for the delivery in terms of the government business. And also we see SAPO playing a more role, especially when we know that the mail business is declining. I've already touched on the PFMA exemption. And then the next slide just provide more how does everything work in terms of the value chain, where we see this has been the anchor of the turnaround, where we're looking at, for example, if you look at financial prudence, is how do we optimize the costs, and also how do we retain the revenue and also grow the revenue here. This is where we're focusing more on the revenue and cost. And then the next pillar here, where we talk about service provision, is how do we optimize our property portfolio in a way that it can help SAPO to turn around. This is where we're looking at revenue portfolio in terms of generating cash, and also in terms of disposing of our non-core assets. And other one with regard to branch, post office branch modernization and main processing optimization and distribution. The next one with regard to the institutional intelligence, this is where we're looking at the digital capabilities of SAPO in terms of where improvements can be made. With regard to also looking at the reserve market itself. And here where we talk of oversight is in terms of enforcing, also working with ICASA to make sure that the reserve market is protected. And also in terms of SAPO still delivering on the universal service obligation as mandated by the legislature. And then in terms of human resource capital, this is actually to improve the morale of the staff, as we have indicated as a risk. And also how do we make sure that SAPO is optimally structured in order to deliver on the mandate, and also the workforce optimization and skills development. And then in terms of the stakeholder relationships, we are aware that SAPO at the moment, there are reputational damages to the brand. Is how do we begin to restore the brand SAPO, for example. And with regard to the environmental sustainability, this is just to make sure that we are environmentally responsive. So with regard to the next slide, it's just giving a high level of the projections as indicated. This is just showing us how do we work towards restoring the baseline in terms of the lost revenue, and also how do we improve on the overall loss position. As indicated, this slide does signifies the need to look at the longer term turnaround in terms of where we can already see when with SAPO break even, and then when we would see. So more work still need to be done, but this is intended to just enable us to recover and to regain the base revenue. Slide 12, actually, it's more explaining this picture in detail. This is where we're saying we need to restore the revenue baseline for SAPO at the end of March 2021, and also looking at the revenue recovery and other initiatives that can be done in the medium term in terms of restoring and also gaining additional revenue in these areas. For example, when we look at the motor vehicle licenses, the textbook distribution, and the bulk mail. So the next slide is highlighting the pillar that is spoken about with regard to the need to explore the revenue partnership models. This is where we're looking at strategic partnership engagements in order where SAPO can enter into partnership, given that SAPO doesn't have capital at the moment. If we can enter into partnerships where there are revenue sharing and where SAPO can, in the process, be able to drive its modernization strategy, we're looking at such. And then with regard to the next slide, which highlights the revenue growth, we are anticipating that if we implement these initiatives, revenue growth of about 351 million can be explored from these potential partnerships. And then the bottom of the slide is actually indicating which areas are we looking for opportunities. For example, with regard to the payment platforms, the logistics improvements, e-commerce, and the like. But the main aim is to really look at those strategic partnerships where we're envisaging that if we are successful in implementing, this can actually provide a growth to the region of 351 million. And the next slide is actually a continuation of the revenue growth of opportunities, where we're also looking at the cashless solution transaction. This is where we are saying, due to the risks with the cash pay payment, if we were to expedite the implementation of cashless solutions, this can help with regard to reducing the costs. And also we have touched on the property portfolio with regard to the sale of properties, letting of properties, and all of that. We're also looking at revenue recoveries as well with regard to some of the key stakeholders. For example, the monies that SAPO can get with regard to some of the utilities, which are leased to Telkom, for instance. And then in the next slide, this is just to provide the breakdown of the cost benefits that we are envisaging, that when the turnaround is implemented, we can be able to save costs in those areas. And then we also, the main aim is to ensure that at the end of the day, we can reposition, for example, the grant payments, and also to ensure that there are cost reductions with regard to the transport and fleet costs, as these are also mainly the SAPO cost drivers, including the staff cost optimization, and also the property and the IT costs. So these figures are more on the cost reductions. And then with regard to the next slide, we are going more in detail on the property portfolio, because we see this as an opportunity for SAPO to be able to improve even the overall management of a property portfolio in a way that we can be able to derive revenue from there if we optimize usage with regard to actually prioritizing which properties can be used for rental, and then which one are non-core to SAPO, which can be disposed of. So we are actually looking at the portfolio, the overall portfolio of SAPO with regard to properties to be able to address these issues. And the next slide actually explains the logistics arm, which talks to the speed services courier. It's with regard to the different phases that we can do with regard to improving how we're managing the speed couriers. And then here is where we are talking about the ownership driver models. And also we're taking into account what kind of assets we already have with regard to the total number of drivers, the total fleet that the company has. So we have actually highlighted the various stages that would have to be taking place in order for us to be able to fulfill the overall objective. With regard to the next slide, it's actually showing the value chain in terms of how everything fit with regard to the turnaround strategy for 2020, where if you look from point one, we're saying that it's critical to get the funding to operate the business. And also we talk about the cost reduction, which is required across the entire organization, where we can make sure that all hands are on deck in terms of cost reductions. And then we then looking at retraining and retaining and growing the revenue. So these are more explanation of the pillars more in detail, and also looking at when we're saying optimization of the enterprise, and also how do we restructure the organization to position for profitability in the long term. So we're also looking at the HR optimization, which it's already covered. So this slide is just showing how everything fit in, including where we are emphasizing the need for the repurposing of the property portfolio, because we see this more as a quick win in terms of what can be done within the enterprise currently. So with regard to, this just shows all the programs in terms of how everything fit in order to ensure the actual implementation of the initiatives. So the next slides are more providing the different stages in terms of where we are in terms of the programs. For example, if you look at the turnaround, we're saying we are in stage one, in stage two. So this is actually showing how everything fit in, and also if we look at it within the context of the previous slides. So we are saying, for example, with regard to funding, the overall objective is to ensure that we improve on the financial sustainability of the company, and also to manage the pre-funding, and also how do we evaluate and prioritize the project. So all these slides, if I can go to, it just shows you more in detail, just rehashing the areas that I've touched on earlier. The key point is on the last column, where we are showing where we are reiterating the benefits, that this is to ensure, for example, on the turnaround, to ensure that there's business continuity and successful execution of the programs. And also with regard to customer experience, here the benefit we're saying it will help SAPO in terms of enhancing the customer service standards. And then with regard to cost reduction, as well, that is indicated. And with regard to revenue generation, we are saying that if we do implement, then the revenue can be increased by 36 million and that. So with regard to the next slide, which is slide 22, we are emphasizing what are the critical success factors which will enable us to achieve. On the issue of strengthening the leadership and making sure that there's leadership stability, as indicated from the chairperson, we are believing that those appointment of the CEO, CFO, they will go a long way in terms of making sure that SAPO deliver on its commitments. And again, we're reiterating the funding, which is critical to make sure that we do achieve. And then we are also saying that it is important the whole issue on funding, it's re-emphasized. And then we also indicating that there is need to have program of committees and management committees. These are like oversight committees that will be that would have requisite delegation of authority to execute the projects that we have identified. These are already in place, where even among the executives there are different members is serving in different committees to make sure that we deliver on the commitments, and we also have the oversight of the board in these matters. And also we are saying that it's important that we have the skill sets that are matched to what is required in terms of what we need to execute. And also we take into account the challenges with the market in the current economic situation. And then we are also emphasizing that obviously we do need the stakeholder support in terms of implementing this, the turnaround. This has to do with the support from the shareholder, the support from the National Treasury, and also the support even from Parliament itself. So we also emphasizing the need to take ownership across the organization with regard to the entire leadership structure that we have, that the initiatives they are not ending at the executive levels, but across the organization, to make sure that even at the divisional heads, general manager levels, people can be held accountable to make sure that the plan is implemented. And also with regard to procurement, as indicated, we see this as an opportunity to make sure that we improve on our procurement processes so that we can be more agile, and also to make sure that processes can be streamlined in order to benefit SAPO. So the most critical stakeholder obviously being the employees, in terms of making sure that we do mobilize and there is a buy-in in terms of implementing the plan itself. With regard to the challenges and opportunities, we are saying with regard to the delay in the digitalization and modernization of the post office, this is a challenge, but is what the turnaround is intending to address, because obviously we cannot be still talking about digitalization right now. So, and then we're also saying we need to make sure that this is sustainability for SAPO. This is when we look at when the actual ownership of Postbank is moved from SAPO. We see this as a challenge, but also as an opportunity to say that this gives SAPO an opportunity to rework on the business model that would exclude the Postbank, to see how SAPO can be sustainable without the Postbank. And when we work on the new corporate plan, is to already embrace that reality that the ownership of Postbank would be removed from SAPO. And also, how do we make sure that we align the cost base? I think I have touched on some of the costs that need to be reduced. And then we're also looking at, for example, in terms of the opportunities, is to say that although these are challenges, but it does give SAPO opportunity to reorganize itself in order to remain relevant, even when the Postbank elements would be removed, and also to make sure that we can focus on improving performance by getting things done. And we are looking at the current structures that have been put in place in terms of making the divisional heads and having cross-functional teams to make sure that they implement on the turnaround plans. And then while we implement the turnaround plans as well, we're also looking at what are the mitigating factors where we realize that there is no improvements, is to already look at what can we put as corrective measures in terms of making sure that we do turnaround. We were also requested to touch on the SASSA grants payments as part of the presentation. So in terms of the presentation on SASSA, we actually reflecting on the payment and the report up to the end of August, as we only finished the payment of September recently. So that September report is not yet available. So we base this on the month of August, and then these are the stats in terms of what was paid. This is where SAPO is responsible in terms of what was paid through the Postbank, through the ITPS, and also the Mzansi account. And then what actually the slide is saying is that there's been a steady growth on overall in terms of the payments. where we're looking at the growth of 1.61% over the past 6 months from March to August, as reflected in the table. And the next slide is just going in detail with regard to the overall grant payments by the different channels. So this is where we indicating what was paid by the merchants, by the ATMs, by SAPO.
Targets for Q1, and the current level of performance is.
Okay, with regard to, I thought there was a cross line there. With regard to the slide, as indicated, the slide is more providing the more detailed breakdown by the various channels that are participating in the SASSA grant payments. And it shows the breakdown, for example, with regard to what was paid via the ATM, the merchants, and SAPO. It's reflected in the figures. And for example, the SAPO one would be the one in gray. In the statistics. On slide 26, we're reflecting on the payments according to the provinces, as reflected on the slides. We're showing the stats from March up to August, and as it can be noted with regard to this table. And we are saying 219. We're actually showing, if we check on the first column, that's March, that's April, that's May, and then that's up to August. So it's showing the beneficiaries that were paid at the various pay points up to the period end of August. And then, as indicated, with regard to the September figures, they're not yet available. And also, this is actually showing also the payments that about the 1,034 cash payment points, which are on the 769 routes. The next slide is providing a high-level overview summary of the grant payment. This has to do with the 350 SRD grants. And we are showing the grand total in terms of the total number of beneficiaries, which is over 2 million beneficiaries that were paid for the month of August, which is compared to the month of July, which was about 1.77 million. And then there is a slight increase there. And then we're also showing the total cash values of what was paid from the SRD funding, which is 1.5 million, which is 1.5 billion of cash. So compared to the 766 million, which was paid in July. So we also providing the breakdown per province in terms of what was paid for the Eastern Cape, Free State, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northern Cape, and Western Cape. The next slide. The next slide more talks about the challenges, and as reflected in the slide. And obviously, the main challenge here being the robberies in terms of armed robberies, burglaries, and CIT. This is basically because of the distribution of cash, where then we see the rise in terms of the robberies and stuff. But with regard to how we mitigating, SAPO is working with the SAP and law enforcement agencies in terms of addressing the robberies, for example. And also with regard to the damages done to the building that were being battled, that were burglared before. So we are working through our properties portfolio in order to make sure that those buildings have been repaired. And then with regard to the network connectivity, SAPO is addressing the network connectivity, and we're looking at upgrading the network for the branches. And in terms of the target is to get that process completed by November 2020. And then the next slide, a request was, this is just to reflect on the collaboration that SAPO has currently with SITA. This is to make sure that SAPO leverage on SITA's existing contracts with regard to the acquisition of software, where SAPO is working closely with SITA. And then the reason for that is to make sure that at least there's collaboration where there can be pricing gains and also cost reduction for SAPO to utilize the transversal contracts that are already existing. And then currently through our IT, we are looking at what other areas of collaboration can be entered to with SITA. This will bring an end to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now, honorable members, get to a point of engagement. I would now note the hands of members who would want to speak. I saw Honorable Fagu's hand was up. Honorable Mackenzie. May I just check if I'm missing a pen? Honorable Malala would then follow Honorable Mackenzie. Honorable Kubeka, or Gumbu, then Honorable Kubeka after Honorable, in that order. Honorable Fagu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to yourself, to Minister and Deputy Minister, honorable members that are present, the SAPO board and officials. Chair, let me thank the presentation that we have received today. I think it gives us an opportunity maybe to reflect on what we have heard in the media. The clarity that has been given, especially by the acting chair of the board, I think on all the allegations that have been made on the allegations that are made, I think let us appreciate the input that she has given us, but also let us welcome the new board that has been appointed by the minister. I hope that they understand the great responsibility they have in making sure that as SAPO is trying to reposition the post office, they understand the mandate that is on their shoulders. But also let us applaud the board currently for making a stage of appointing a CFO and a CFO. I think office. And I see that while some of the challenges they are raising is very low staff morale, but again, in the strategic and objective, they are counteracting this to say that they need to have total engagement with employees at all levels. And I think it's very important. And I think that the board must engage employees so that they understand what the board seeks to achieve. I see that amongst us, maybe, I don't know if he's one of the board members. I remember he was my CEO at some time, Katu, Mr. Katu. I think he knows how to deal with this matter. I know that with his expertise, I've once worked with him. Hopefully, he's a board member. I'm not sure. But also, Chair, let us also congratulate SAP, especially on the cashless pay points that have been made, because as we know that the post office have been experiencing a long queues. So this will somehow reduce the lines at the post office. But my question is, I remember when Deputy Minister at some point presented this issue of cashless pay points, we ask a question. SMM is benefiting from these programs. Perhaps if we can get clarity, who's the responsible for these cash points? I see on the baseline revenue recovery of 3.3 billion for March 2020. They are talking about motor vehicle licensing. I think it's important, Chair, that we're in the fourth industrial revolution now. You know, it would be even better if we can do these things online, if SAPO can be innovative to make sure that if I want to renew my license, I just do it online. If I want to renew my visa, maybe there should be that partnership between themselves and Home Affairs. I can do it online. I don't have to go and stand in long queues. But part of the reduction of cost in security, also we must, because that was a big issue when it comes to SAPO. We see now that as they are trying to reposition the post office, the security cost will be reduced, transport cost will be reduced, and then, Chair, on the issue of armed robberies that have been happening at SAPO, I want to understand that it engage SAPO, that when people go to these post offices secured, we even hear that some of these robberies are done with staff members of SAPO. So I'll come back again, Chair. Those are my few questions and input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Fak. Honorable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning. Morning, Minister, and colleagues from the department and the South African Post Office. Good to have you here this morning. Minister, in this time of increased focus on corruption and state capture, I think this is the time for the Minister and the department to conduct themselves in a manner that's totally above board and beyond reproach. And instead, we read in the media of irregularities and corruption, nepotism, cronyism. The SAPO is leaking like a sieve, and the acting CEO made reference to that, with stories of boardroom battles, preferred tenderpreneurs, desperately low staff morale, and a comment that the SAPO is running out of money. Minister, the SAPO is in a shambles, and it's on your watch that this has been allowed to happen. And that's why when I hear you talk about, and I quote, a culture of excellence, or stability at leadership level, when, Minister, it is you that has created this crisis at the SAPO, with the actions that you took, with your interference in the operation of this entity and its board, when in fact it was on track once Mr. Mark Barnes had left. When you talk about a culture of excellence, there isn't even a track and trace system in the South African Post Office. So when Professor Khair of Stellenbosch University tries to log on to track and trace to see where his academic literature is from the US, he can't access it at all. And when he phones the helpline number, it rings and rings and just doesn't get answered. So there's no customer service at the South African Post Office. So when you come here and you present before the committee another strategic turnaround plan, and I've lost count, I challenge anyone on this committee to tell us how many strategic turnaround plans we've seen from the South African Post Office in the last 6 years. Because I look at the strategic turnaround plan and there is one new thing, which is the driver partnership model for speed services, which is one of the things that actually works at the South African Post Office. And I see you're getting involved in that. But that chaos that is the South African Post Office at the moment, Minister, that is your creation. Lindiwe Twele, and you did mention, the acting CEO did mention something about Ms. Kwele and the disciplinary. Where is she this morning? I'm sorry, maybe I misheard what you were saying or something. Is she actually back at work? Is she still being paid? The court said she needed to be reinstated, I understood. Is she at the South African Post Office as we speak? Because I understand, or has she been suspended again? If you can just give us some clarity on that. And then in terms of the Post Bank and the controlling company, Minister, I raised this at the committee previously, and I was given an answer that obviously wasn't true, because you told me, Minister, You said that the Post Bank would remain within the South African Post Office Group with the South African Post Office Group as the Post Bank shareholder. You've now told us something completely different here, that the Post Bank is in fact definitely going to be hived off into this separate entity. Most postal operations worldwide, post offices and a post bank are one entity. The vast majority. I have no idea why you are removing the post bank from the post office group without taking the consequences of that into account. And we heard the acting CEO talk about it, saying, you know, there are these consequences, and we're not quite sure how we're going to deal with this. I mean, surely you take those consequences, you answer those before you make the decision to separate the post bank. What is the timeline for that? When do you intend to separate the post bank completely from the South African Post Office? And I'll tell you why I ask that. Because how will you stop the South African Post Office being liquidated if you remove the post bank ownership from its balance sheet? The South African Post Office is then bankrupt. Absolutely. Look at the balance sheet, it is bankrupt. You cannot, according to all the laws and regulations in this country, you can't then keep running the organization. So what is your plan, Minister, for that? Then in terms of the controlling company for the Post Bank, you're on record a couple of days ago as saying the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies must be the Post Bank controlling company. Minister, has the South African Reserve Bank okayed that notion, and that a government department is the Post Bank's controlling company? Let's assume that that's okay, and the Reserve Bank says it's okay. With the department and the government owning a share of the Post Bank, technically the Post Bank would therefore be a state-owned bank. Is this move to separate the Post Bank from the Post Office just a move to meet the resolution of the ANC Congress to create a state bank? I think we should be told, because I can see of no other possible reason to render the SAPO technically bankrupt. Then, in terms of e-commerce, the COVID-19 pandemic, I think, has led several tech providers to offer services that are aimed at helping businesses build or grow their presences online through e-commerce, through e-malls. And we've seen it here. Mr. Mark Barnes, I think, was quite prescient when he started this initiative, the e-mall initiative, without even seeing what was coming down the line. We know this was first, the e-commerce platform was first proposed by Dr. Siyabonga Cwele in early 2018, and Mr. Mark Barnes championed this initiative. It's nearly 3 years later, and how close is the South African Post Office to delivering this holy grail, this answer to many of the financial problems facing the Post Office going forward? And let me tell you why I ask this question. As an example of competition, the digital solutions firm Cyber Ecom has introduced an all-in-one shopping platform that allows South African businesses, and I'm reading here, to develop an online presence and tap into the booming digital economy. It allows an e-commerce website, they can market their products online, customized online shopping platform, there's an online payment solution, there's card not present payments immediately available, and this is available as we speak. There's an e-commerce solution, interactive mobile app. You can put more than 1,000 items on your website. There's an interface with customer relationship management. Other companies have also introduced this, including BCX's newly introduced division, BCX Exa. MasterCard have got a similar system, and Insaki E-Commerce Academy. So while the Post Office isn't even out of the gates with the e-commerce solution, we have these other customers that are already offering this. And then we hear in the media about Dr. Andile Ngaba, who's had quite a role to play. He's quite influential in the department and in government. A long history of cozy involvement with the department. We hear he's sniffing around for a SAPO consultant's job at a hefty price tag. And he's also offering a preferred solution for the South African Post Office's e-commerce platform. And I think my question is, can you clarify what Dr. Ndaba's role is at the SAPO? Is there any intention to appoint him as a consultant? Has the South African Post Office looked at any other e-commerce platform solutions other than that offered by Dr. Ndaba? And what is the road ahead with regards to the rollout of the solution, including details of tenders, RFPs, etc., that you would normally associate with this kind of thing? Then I wonder if we could, just moving on, I wonder if we could have an update, please, on the Group 4 Fidelity tender. There was a case in the Gauteng High Court, G4S Cash Solutions, against SAPO and Fidelity, where judgment was handed down in favor of G4S Cash Solutions. The judge found that SAPO had issued a very vague request for proposal. The concept is that a vague request for proposal is one of the first signs of corruption, as it suggests that an entity is just issuing a tenders and already has decided on the company to be awarded and is just ticking boxes. So, there's no smoke without fire, and there seems to be a lot of preferred bidders crawling around out of the woodwork at SAPO and the Post Bank. Can you just give us an update on the cash solutions or the cash solutions contract, especially in light of that court judgment? And then in terms of social grants, as I understand, and again, the media's been full of SAPO running out of money. When they say running out of money, I presume they mean running out of cash at branches rather than the South African Post Office not having any money in the bank. If you can just confirm that for me. And then there was another story about the Post Office borrowing R1 billion from Post Bank. Is there any truth to that? And could you give some clarity there? I think, as I understand it, and perhaps you could help me, the concept of pre-funding SASSA grants is about making cash available at branches. And if that is the case, can you just give me an idea of what role you anticipate Grindrod and Lezentric playing in that pre-funding concept? And then I'm nearly done, Chairperson, thank you. I asked a written question. I submitted a written question to the Parliament in Parliament relating to Blue Label Telecoms and whether there was any arrangement or contract between the Post Office and this company. I was told an emphatic no, there wasn't. No relation at all. And in fact, I have that answer. Yet Blue Label Telecoms keeps popping up with relation to grant and grant distribution. Can you tell me, how does Blue Label enter the picture, either at the Post Office or the Post Bank? Who spoke to them? What are they doing in the Post Office? What is their involvement in the Post Office systems? Because clearly they're there. We know about the letter, we know about the tender, we know about the contract. Can we just have some clarity on that? Because on the one hand, we have all these reports about Blue Label, and on the other hand, I have them saying, no, there's no involvement at all. What is it? Can you please just clarify that for me? Can you also tell me, in terms of the Post Office systems, are those handled in-house, or do you have an external company doing this? And who is this company, or who are those companies, and what sort of SLA is in place? I see that work, or you're starting to talk to SITA. I would imagine that SITA would have been involved in this right from the beginning, and if not, why not? And then just lastly, Chairperson.
Your Honourable McKeon.
Thank you. Just literally my last question. Does South Africa remain on the United States of America's UPS list of countries for which mail acceptance has been suspended due to service impacts? Are we still on that list, or has the UPS, and in fact the World Mail system, opened up again? We had this report, Chairperson, and the strategic turnaround plan and the presentation presented, and thank you very much for that. There's no reference in that to the Post Office's core business, which is delivering mail. So that's the systems and the mail backlog. I think we know, where are we in terms of the mail backlog? What does the backlog look like? What is the size of it? And when can we expect to have it cleared? Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for your indulgence.
Yes, sir. Honourable Mlala.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Honourable Mlala, we can hear you.
Okay, no, thank you. Good morning, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and all protocol observed. I have very few questions, but Chairperson, it's quite difficult to ask old questions to new people, new acting chair, and so on, newly appointed CEO, and so on. But firstly, Minister has herself indicated that SAPO has not been performing well in terms of finances and leadership instability. The minister further said that mail is one of the open components that sustain the post office. But the report that is presented does say something else. Maybe if the acting chair or the CEO can clarify that so that we are clear whether indeed mail is contributing to sustainability of the post office or not. The other issue that I wanted us to look at in the presentation, they are talking about the high fixed costs, and they are also indicating how they are lowering them, but they are not clarifying in terms of operating cost of staff, because there's somewhere where they indicate that they have not implemented the collective agreement. So the two issues are related. I need to know in terms of staff, does it mean rationalization? What does it mean in terms of the operating cost in relation to staff? And now looking at COSATU now, COSATU is on strike in relation to the collective agreements. And the presentation says they are engaging. They are still continuing to engage on this issue of the collective agreement. I want to know if the union in SAPO, is it also involved in the strike? At the same time, they are still negotiating what is really happening, because we need clarity on that one. The other issue is, I think on this one, Honorable Mackenzie slightly covered me, because my concern is that we are 2 years in office now, almost 2 years in office, but clearly we have seen a lot of turnaround strategies. Even though this one, they are saying it's a short-term turnaround strategy. My question is, you also spoke about the I don't know if I should call it the bailout, because you're not saying the bailout, but you are saying that you need money, you have requested money from Treasury in relation to medical aid contribution, pension fund, and SARS obligation, and so on. Now, I want to know whether this turnaround plan is the one that relates to your request to the Treasury, or you have a separate presentation. And if needs be, I think this committee should have access to that request so that we know the details, so that we can hold you accountable. So that in future, when Treasury has agreed to give you money, at least we know whether this is the plan that is requesting money in a short term, or there's a separate request for the specific issues that you are raising, medical aid contribution, pension fund, and SARS, and so on. And maybe my last comment, Chair, which is not necessarily a question. The minister spoke about stabilizing the executive management. I don't know, maybe the minister should clarify this, whether stabilizing means appointing new people or what, because stabilizing, there's a problem with staff at SAPO. There's always leakage of information. There's always, what we need to know is what causes that, more than just appointing people. We can always appoint, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we need to know is what causes this instability. And maybe also the acting chair must clarify she mentioned 3 issues around CCMA and the awards, procedural and fairness. I did not get that quite clear. I want to know, because my concern, Chair, is that seemingly in most entities, we're having a problem with people who take their matters to CCMA, they get the award, they challenge the matter up until the labor court. But when you look at the cost of that, sometimes it's not necessary. So I'm advising the CEO or the chair that I don't think this is a good way of doing things. I've seen in other entities, I would not mention them by the name, that they are spending millions and millions of money on matters that they don't have a case on, just because they are not spending, they are not using their money. Maybe what we need is that in future, if you get an award at CCMA, you take the matter to the court, you must pay from your pocket, because clearly state money is being used unfairly from where I'm sitting. So I'm saying that maybe acting chair should also clarify that these issues around CCMA matters, how many people, who has got the awards, and what are they doing about it. I think those are all my questions, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mlala. Honorable Gumbo.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning to everybody. I also would like to thank SAPO for the presentation. Just some few questions, Chair. The first one, I just want to check whether as SAPO, you see yourself as an organization which will be unable to pay salaries to your staff members in the near future because of your financial situation. Secondly, you are talking of a very low staff morale. I just want to establish as to what are the main causes of this so-called very low staff morale, and what are the plans to improve this situation? And you are also saying that the filling in of the position of the CEO is in its final stages. Now, I just want you to give us an exact time as to when are you going to conclude this process, because to me, this position is very critical. And again, in your presentation, you are saying you have 641 company-owned buildings. Are all these 641 buildings used as post office branches, or is it that some of these buildings are being rented to different tenants? Lastly, Chair, is to be on the issue of burglaries. Are these burglaries happening where there are no security personnel or what? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Kumbu. Honorable Kubega.
Thank you, Chair. And also let me greet Minister, Deputy Minister, all the members of the committee, officials, and also on the side of SAPO delegation. Chair, firstly, maybe let me start by this one, which is not in the presentation also, just to check with the SAPO to say, on the issue of COVID, whilst there were this challenge of COVID, can I just check with the SAPO to say, when they were working with whatever that needs to be assisted to the public, is there anything on the side of the procurement maybe that they have followed to say they managed to do whatever that it needs supposed to be done actually procedurally, especially on the issue of the procurement, if there was something that needs to be procured. Is there any deviation maybe that they think they have done on the side of procuring, or everything on the side of SAPO, it went smooth? Nothing that they decided just to deviate. They have followed all the processes. This is the first question into the entity. Also, let me thank you, because they have tried to present and they are explaining to say this is a short-term turnaround strategy that they are trying to give us, as we fully understand, to say SAPO, since it is having some challenges. And also let me thank to say the minister have clarified to say, indeed, in SAPO there is an instability, and also we've seen that we have just been on the media time and again, almost with this past few months. But it seems as if they are trying to correct these matters, as you can see that there is a serious challenge on the side of the SAPO. And also let me thank, because I can see on the nucleus of SAPO, which is the executive, at least it's only one member at the moment that they have been appointed as the CFO, as he has started early in this October month. Now it shows that they are trying to correct, because if there is no executive, nothing that you can expect actually which will run in a positive manner on the side of SAPO. But now, Chair, can I just get the clarity, because most of the things Honorable Mackenzie, Honorable Gumbu, also and Honorable Fakwe have tried to cover on the issue of the security, but can I get a clarity on the side of security? Who is responsible for security when there is a payment grants? Is it only us as SAPO, or also the SASSA try to assist, because actually it is the beneficiary actually of these grants, as we need just to deliver those services to assist SASSA. Is there any assistance? Because now you can see the issue of robberies and the issue of burglaries, it's huge actually in SAPO. Is there any plan that is beyond? Because if you are saying you want to reduce, or on the side of the reduction, or on the side of the security, whilst there is this crisis of burglaries and robberies, are you saying you are safe enough to say you'll deliver in a proper manner, or you can see that is still a serious challenge that needs to be taken into consideration to say how best can we have a solution in dealing with these matters of security in SAPO? And I'm happy also to when the acting chair clarifies the issue of saying there is no tender at all of this 2-point-something billion that have been raised all along. Is just a dream to those ones who are pushing their propaganda. Also, let me say on the side of the turnaround, I can hear, I don't want to comment further or to say now how actually this is the 6th or the 5th turnaround strategy. Actually, they are saying they are trying their level best in order that they need to have an entity which will be working in an order that will satisfy on the side of service delivery. And I'm happy because I can hear that the entity is saying it prepares, and also it's having that courage to have a support on the side of the shareholder, and also a support on the side of the committee, and they are taking into consideration to say they want to support the morale of the staff, as they can see that there is a serious challenge there that needs to be attended. And also on the side of the connectivity for all the branches, it seems as if SAPO is trying to do its level best in order that it can attend that challenge for the side of the connectivity. So also thanks for that. But now what I would like to understand also is this one of Mayor Lindiwe Kwele. Is she still on suspension, or Mayor Lindiwe Kwele is back at work, as you are raising the issue to say there are things that you were dealing with it, or Mayor Lindiwe, she will wait there until the case is being finalized? That's where that I want just to get a clarity on the side of Mekwele. And also, can I be convinced on the side of the e-commerce, because we can hear that somehow it is positive to say the issue of e-commerce, it can boost us on the side of the revenue. But now I just wonder, because now it was a challenge before the issue of lockdown. At the moment, is there any progress that can we be convinced to say we can continue with that issue of supporting? Because now, as we can hear, that the issue of the mail also is the one who can boost and support the issue of SAPO. Can you say something on that side? And on the side of the portfolio, can I get a clarity to say, whilst you are raising this 641 company, which is being owned by SAPO, and also that 1,120 lease building, to say, is there anything that we can get which can boost the revenue also on the side of SAPO? Or there are challenges maybe on the issue of those facilities to say, when we want to lease, or are they in a good state in order that they can just try to boost the SAPO with the issue of the revenue? So let me pause there, Chair, and then we will take it maybe if there is another round, Chair. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Those were the hands we had for now. We'll look at the time and maybe get back. But because the minister would have indicated time limitations, I think we'll start from there. But let me formally acknowledge that the Deputy Minister would have also joined. We had noted the apology before the start of the meeting, that she may join the meeting later on. I'm sure we can be guided, Minister. I see it's almost 22:11, that we start responding, and then maybe the board will still be around and we continue with the engagements. Thank you. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and thank you to the honorable members for the questions that they have asked. Comrade Chair, your honorable Chairperson. Firstly, the issues raised by Honorable Fagu. The board will get into the details of those, as most of them talk to the work that is operational, not at oversight level. I would like to get into Honorable Mackenzie on his statement, rather than questions, on the fact that the state capture, there's corruption, and he wants the minister and the department to rise above those. Well, I may not be using his correct words in terms of raising above, but to say there's been allegations and these things are there. Chairperson, the last time I was here when these matters were raised, I did say because now we are processing some of the things in terms of the updates, and then we'll come and give an account. I just want to say to one thing first, as we talk about the issues on the media, the issue of the removal of the then chairperson of the post office, Ms. Colleen Makobele, which is a matter that is at court, and right now I can't get into its details. Then the allegations on corruption, I see Honorable Mackenzie goes to detail, including asking for some documentation or responses to that. Honorable members, as I said, and I've been saying in all the platforms that I've been engaging on, in all the 11 portfolio organizations that report to the department, we have given the same message that I'm going to give here today. That it is in our interest, as guided by the governing party, to make sure that we rid government of corrupt activities, including people behind corruption. We've went to an extent of saying those that have evidence, they must report such ills to the law enforcement agencies. Because for us, corruption is not a matter to politic and not attend to it, because it is one disease that destroys not only the moral fiber of our society, but that deprives our people, the people that we represent, especially the disadvantaged, deprives them of quality service and opportunities that they could get. I did mention on the other time that unfortunately I am not responsible for what goes to media. I'm not the editor, I'm not the journalist, neither I am a source. And therefore, I cannot stand here and say this is what Banban says, because really is that I'll be consuming much time on media and doing what these ones want me to do, being defocused and analyzing media. I really do not have that time, which is why at all incidents and instances that Honorable Mackenzie makes reference to in relation to the media articles, we have provided our response. Just like now, I had brought the post office to respond, and they have spoken to those issues. As the ANC government, we remain committed to rooting out corruption, as I said. And we invite all those, both within the ANC and outside, those that have evidence, to expose such and take it further to make sure that we go to jail. Zondo is there if we can't go to the Hawks or anybody else that is responsible. I said, Honorable Mackenzie, I see he's putting it as a statement. When he puts that, it's not a question that he's asking, are they true or not? But he's putting a statement, hence he cautions us to say he wants us to rise above. Honorable Mackenzie, I commit to you here without you cautioning us. That's what we are committed to, as bound by the decisions of the governing party that deployed me to government. Is SAPO running out of cash? Yes, Honorable Mackenzie. SAPO has run out of cash for a number of years, including during Mark Ban's time. Government has put about 8 billion rands into SAPO with all this number of turnaround plans that you are talking about. And yes, every time government pops out money, there's a turnaround strategy or plan as expected when we apply for funds to say, how would you plan to change this that has not worked for you as an organization? And indeed, those that are responsible come up with turnaround plans to say, this is what we think will work for post office, and then if it makes sense to the funding organization, treasury in this case, the money gets to be released. Whether those turnaround plans end up being implemented is another thing. I will allow Chairperson, when the time comes, the acting CEO to talk to that, because she has the history of all these monies and what has been happening in the post office, including during Mark Ban's time, up to date. Have the turnaround strategy been implemented? Have we not put money? Has post office not lost money during those times? And does it mean we should then fold our arms and not come up with other turnaround strategies through the board and its management, because we do not come up with those as the shareholder. Ours is to provide oversight, to see and listen to what they say as the people entrusted with the responsibility of running the affairs of the post office. Honorable Mackenzie mentions a very important matter again. Mark Barnes left the post office on track. Once more, I will leave that to the acting CEO to detail at what stage, so that when we speak here with authority, we speak on facts and not on what is on media, without saying he didn't leave it on track. What I'm trying to say, the challenges that we see at post office are not challenges that arose out after Mr. Barnes left and the acting CEO, which is why we seconded her to the post office, because she's been providing oversight over the post office from the department. Therefore, we saw it important that we take somebody who's aware and understands the challenges and the concerns of Parliament, including the shareholder, when it relates to the work that's being done by the post office. There is no customer service at SAPO. Honorable Mackenzie makes mention. Yes, that's why he said, well, that's one of the things that we want to focus on, to improve or instill a culture of excellent service, and that we will never give up because we have failed on certain aspects. We believe that it is our responsibility to improve day by day. We also give space that when mistakes have been made, because people are human and they are trying certain things in order to improve, we correct the mistakes, because it is our responsibility to unlearn the things that have not worked, but we also have a responsibility to try new things whilst we're trying to build that efficient organization that SAPO must be. On the turnaround strategy, there's nothing new. Honorable Mackenzie mentions again, and then he makes mention except for the speedy services. It is true that we still believe that the services at SAPO are still relevant, up to date. We're not only about mail, but there's lots that we can do. And this is why earlier on I made reference to the stabilization of SAPO, including from board level, to make sure that the stability that can provide oversight over the executive functions, and they give the strategic leadership that they're expected to give. And therefore, if they still believe, like we believe, that yes, there are elements, but these have not been implemented as you correctly put it. The question that is very important, have they not been implemented because they didn't want to, or because they are not working, or because of capacity or capability issues, which is why we saw it important that we also look at stabilizing the executives that must drive the vision of the board in that context. Ms. Lindy Wekwele, where is she? Is she being paid? All right, that question goes to the board. As I'm the Minister of 11, I wouldn't trace everyone. I will request the board to respond to that. I know if she was suspended, that she's supposed to be paid, because I did not get a report that says suspension without pay. Definitely she was paid, or if she's still whatever, but the board will respond to that. Honorable Mackenzie goes to an extent of saying, Minister, you came here and told us that post office will remain the SSC, the bank controlling company of Postbank. Probably if Honorable Mackenzie can bring that record of where the minister said that. As I took office in 2018, November, the first meeting I had with the post office was exactly that, when I got a handover from my predecessors. I was not starting from a new. Getting updates of the work that has been done, getting reasons of why certain decisions were taken. And this is what I did. To say, well, if Treasury and the department, guided by whatever that was in front of them, and in this instance, the fact that the post office could not, due to its financial standing, could not be the bank controlling company. Therefore, a decision was taken that either Treasury or the Department of Communications, then Department of Telecommunications, be the bank controlling company. And the decision was taken that let the Department be. And yes, the Reserve Bank has approved that. Even if we were to go back to date, without SAPO's financial status improving, they would never agree. The department had supported the post office in saying post office should be the bank controlling company. And that I did explain when I came to Parliament, that this is what we supported. And then when these were raised, then we then had to opt for the decision to say, all right, we allow the Department of Telecoms and Postal Services then to be the bank controlling company. And that process is moving. We have engagements with the Reserve Bank. That is why the money bill was amended in Parliament in order to give effect to this decision that was taken. And now we are waiting for cabinet processes in terms of amending the SAPO Act in relation to who the bank controlling company is, because it changes from being post office. And Honorable Mackenzie, you are asking why am I removing the post bank from SAPO? I am not removing anything. It's a decision that is there, as I said, based on what I have said. And as I said, having to look into what we face with, that's the decision that was taken, not by Stella Ndabeni Abrahams. I do not own the department. I cannot individually or singularly take decisions. I don't represent myself. There are consultations, cabinet must approve. All those things have to be followed, and then I can report to say, even if it has been proposed by us, then does cabinet agree, which is what I represent in the department. Timelines for the separation. I've already spoken to the issue that we're now waiting for the process to go to cabinet. The Treasury was supposed to be consulted and all that, and we are busy with that. So we are waiting the cabinet processes, which start at cluster levels, FOSAD, and all those that must be finalized. How do we stop the post office from being liquidated? We're doing everything, Honorable Mackenzie, trust me, in order to make the post office, to save the post office from being liquidated. And those strategies, as I said, they've detailed them in terms of what they're looking at, but also from our side, as the shareholder, we're looking at others that unfortunately, until they are approved, I cannot talk to them. We are running a commercial organization that used not to focus on commercial. Therefore, there's lots of interest, which is why we will, upon approval, tightening all those things, then try to come up and brief the committee on certain interventions, as you are supposed to know, so that you can hold us accountable. I mentioned that, yes, the Reserve Bank was part of the Reserve Bank is the one that came up with the fact that SAPO cannot be the bank controlling company. So there was no need for you to approve if it is them that raised the concern. Is the move to establish or to separate Post Bank from the Post Office a move to give realization to the resolution of the ANC in order to establish the state bank? Most of the work that we implement as government is work that arises out of the resolutions of the ANC, which is a governing party in South Africa. It provides policy as we go to elections to convince the electorate in terms of the manifesto, and that manifesto gets to be carried out by the government that the people have voted for. Do we want the Post Bank to be the state bank? We would gladly be happy, because we do believe there's a need to diversify and empower the state to have certain elements that it participates on in relation to the banking, and also to allow for transformation of an industry that has really not been willing to transform, but accommodate even those that are unbanked in order to access the service. So yes, did we not say we want to build an entrepreneurial state? We said so, and therefore we'll continue to introduce certain things and make certain changes when necessary in order to make sure that our government, just like other countries, if you were to go to China, the government has survived through establishing lots of state banks, and that gives competition and also gives access to those that do not have access in terms of finances. And that is why we see lots of the companies, we see lots of people in China being entrepreneurs with support from government. we are trying to open that space up because all these years that we are talking about, we still have things that have not been addressed in the finance sector. So we do believe that the state has a responsibility towards empowering and funding if we have to fund, but we have a responsibility to play in the banking sector. So yes, we will continue to bring certain things. And as I said, I did not shy away that it is our responsibility to make sure that the resolutions of the governing party to find expression in government, was that's what we have committed to the people of South Africa, and that's what they voted us for. How far is the e-commerce? The post office will respond to that. The role of Dr. Ngaba in the e-commerce platform, post office will respond to that. Just to clarify one thing, at no stage, as the post office has explained, at no stage did we bring Dr. Ngaba towards any procurement process or any other procurement process. We're very clear of what is expected of us. We're very clear, again, of partnerships that we can forge in order to benefit our entities. And when we identify those, we will arrange to say, there's a story that's being told here. Does the story resonate with you? Do you think you can build from the story or not? And as it was explained, even in the press conference that Honorable Mackenzie made reference to, it was explained that the responsible DDG for International Affairs invited Dr. Ngaba based on the work that they were doing towards COVID. And Honorable Mackenzie, I was on suspension then. I was not in the department. I came back for approval, I questioned, and then the teams brought the meeting and requested the minister to be part of the meeting, of which I have to be all the time when they request my presence in the meeting. The post office will then respond if they've hired Dr. Ngaba. So all I know about Dr. Ngaba, as I know him very well, he doesn't do government of business. He's a commissioner in the Presidential Commission. He's a former DG of the department. He doesn't do work with the department. In all the platforms we have engaged with him, that's what he has always emphasized. I do not think or believe that he has lied to us. If he has lied, then that's another thing. Cash solutions, contract and court judgment, I would allow post office to respond to that. Is it true that post office borrowed money from 1 billion rands from post office? The team will respond to that, but yes, we are aware, as I said earlier on, the reason the post office could not be the bank controlling company is because of the monies that post office transferred from the post bank without the approval of post bank. And I know that every time we talk about pre-funding, that matter is being raised, and I think it was about 700 million, if I'm correct, but they are here to talk to the specifics. If there's another one, I don't know, unless they'll be talking to pre-funding to say, come on board. As we have always tried to bring the two boards to work together, because for us, they're inseparable. They need to exist, to coexist in order to fulfill the service that must be fulfilled to the electorate of South Africa, especially on the social grants project, amongst others. Pre-funding, there's Green Road. I didn't hear with who. Again, that one will go to post office. It's operational. I wouldn't be involved in the name of companies that are working with post office. Honorable Mackenzie says he is aware that the post office or the post bank has for several times said they do not have a unique business that they do with Blue Label, but it keeps popping up on media. As I said, I don't think even themselves they will be responsible for what keeps popping up on media, but he states that he is aware that there's a contract. So I would invite him to then give us that contract, whether it gives post office or ourselves, so that we can follow up. Why do they say they don't have a contract, and what is the contract about? Because it has been mentioned amongst other the allegations as SASSA. For now, we do not have.
I'm sorry to interrupt the Minister. With your indulgence, Chairperson, that wasn't my question. And Minister, that wasn't what I said. I asked given the mentions of Blue Label in the media and that their name constantly pops up, is there any contract in existence at all, or is any contract being explored with Blue Label Telecommunications? I just want to find out what their involvement is in the post office or the post bank. That was the question. Thank you, Minister. Sorry to interrupt you, and thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mackenzie, for that correction. The post office will once more respond to that. As I said, I do not get to be involved on contracts, whether they are upcoming or they are existing. So they will respond to that. But as I said, according to the information they provided to us and according to information that was provided to the portfolio committee, they had said they do not have the contract. So I thought you were saying you are aware that there's a contract. That's why I was saying then you can help us so that we can investigate the matter. Now that you're clarifying it, they will again talk to it if things have changed. Honorable Mackenzie, the questions mainly talk to the operations of the post office, more on staff issues, the turnaround. Yes, I spoke to this. There's lots of turnaround strategies that have been presented, and I explained why. And the money that is requested from Treasury, Honorable Mulala says they would like to see that request. I will then request Honorable Mulala and other honorables to wait for Treasury to finalize these processes, because we do not want to really, because it's a portfolio committee and then it becomes a public document. Even myself is the Director General that is responsible, as the PFMA stipulates. Mine is to approve to say indeed there's a need, but the nitty-gritties are between them as they work in that. This also sits, as I said, we're running a commercial entity, therefore to make sure that whatever that they've requested for, in case, as we know that there's lots of people who render post office related services that are competing with them. So I would request, with all due respect, to say probably if they can wait until they get the feedback from Treasury, and then when we get that feedback, we go to Parliament to say this is what has been approved, this is what we have requested for, and then we can be held accountable on those. Stabilizing the executive management was very important for us, including this that we are referring to, Honorable Mulala, that of taking interest in the leakages of the documents or of information, and you want to know the causes. We did say we are also looking for interventions in terms of trying to go deeper, because as you correctly put it, that there's lots of strategies. I said that's one thing we need to look at. Do these strategies not get to be implemented because of capability issues, or there's no willingness because people are comfortable with what they know, therefore they're not prepared to start new things, or they don't have confidence in them, therefore probably at times the turnaround plans are drafted by consultants, which means there will be no ownership. We're trying to get all of those in place, and we said we're going to intervene. Post office currently does not have funding to conduct some of the things, and I am aware because the union also wrote to us to say they've requested the board to conduct investigation on those. So these are the things that we're also exploring from our side to say, indeed, they can, as we have seen, we've been putting CEOs, we've been putting boards, but things are not moving. As I said, government has already invested more than 8 billion to post office, but we have not yielded any positive results. What is that is not working? Therefore, that's what we are looking at, and the administrative teams working with Treasury and others are really looking to what interventions within the law that we can introduce in order to help discover those. Honorable Gumbu wants to understand why do we have staff morale, the causes of those. And of course, in an organization that is not stable, you're bound to experience that. But also in an organization where at times you're not certain if you're going to get your pension money, your medical aid money, you're bound to be uncertain, and the morale will be too low. But also taking into consideration the recent events in terms of the SRD 350 grants that we've been providing, you will also realize that we did not have added staff. We had to rely on the same personnel that has been dedicated in ensuring that they render that service without complaining, even though it has put their lives at risk. because most of the burglaries that honorable members are talking about happened during the 350 grant distribution, and including the issues of the security that we're talking about. When I did the visits trying to understand what is happening, we did discover lots of security concerns, which the post office will look into in order to make sure that at least we provide the basics for our employees without just looking at securing the monies, but also how to ensure that our employees are safe where in their areas of operation. Those are one of the things, as I said, the team must send the report to the post office to in relation to what we have discovered and the issues that were raised by the different provincial managers and branch managers that we interacted with. The filling in of the CO position, as they reported, is in process. I have not seen it yet. They're going to send it to the department according to the report by the acting chairperson. They're going to send to us as soon as they find us from their side. But I also want to just explain, when it comes to us, the department via the branch responsible for SOE oversight looks at all those things that they are supposed to look at them in terms of corporate governance, adherence, and all that. Does it talk to the advert and everything? And then including the funds that have been committed in terms of the salary. And when it moves from the security clearance and all those, when it moves, I have to take it to the other processes, including the cabinet cluster processes, and then finality by cabinet. And so it will be difficult for them as the post office to say when it will be finalized, but they can say from their side, this is when it will be at the department's desk. And then from our side, then looking at the cabinet roster, then we can say this is the process, and therefore by this time, because we present not only to any cabinet cluster, but to S8, so when S8 seats, and then that's when we get to have an opportunity to present, and we will have the department and the office looking into the cabinet roster in order to say if it arrives this week, and then they do the assessment, whatever days, and then we take that to cabinet. Honorable members, allow me to pause there. I've already exceeded the time. I didn't see that. I hope I have tried to clarify. But as I said, anything, be it on the media or on the operations, everything is transparent in the department. They'll be able to respond to them, whether they are true, they are not true, and then what are the plans and what are the responses. They'll be able to provide that response. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. May I then invite the board and support to respond.
Thank you, Chairperson. There has been quite a number of questions with regards to Ms. Kwele's matter. I tried to address that in my opening statement, but let me try again if you would allow me. So Ms. Kwele is still on suspension. When we received the whistleblower report, there was a procedural unfairness. However, the arbiter has found that substantively, so based on the information that we had at that time, that we were well within our rights to suspend Ms. Kwele based on the whistleblower report. In terms of paying her, yes, we have been paying her for the last couple of months. I'm taking note of Honorable Malala's comment with regards to where costs are incurred that's sometimes not necessary, and where we don't have a case. So I just need to clarify that we have a case. The independent investigation has revealed that there are certain concerns that we need to address in the process of disciplinary, which I indicated will happen with speed. We are definitely within our rights to have suspended her. That's what it was found. And we can't, the fact that she went to arbitration is well within her rights. So we as a board could not take that right away, and we had to follow the process of arbitration before we could continue with the suspension process. So that's, if I may conclude that on the Ms. Kwele matter. Then in terms of, if I can clarify on the Postbank report that has been mentioned by Honorable Mackenzie. So when we signed the contract with SASSA with regards to payment of social grants, it was understood that the payment of funds will happen within the beneficiaries' accounts from National Treasury and not as an upfront. So with the previous supplier that did it for SASSA, they effectively received the money, like my understanding is like between 5 and 8 days before the actual payment needed to happen. But because the money is paid into the beneficiary's physical accounts, we actually, as SAPO, in order to get the money into the branches, we need to have funds available to the value about 4 to 5 days before the grant payment cycle starts. And that is normally to the value of about 1.6 billion. So some of the funds we can source internally. However, we do require Postbank to assist us with those 4 or 5 days where we need to. So just from an operational, maybe CEO can explain it better than I can. But effectively, we need to order the cash from the CIT companies. So we need to give them that cash, and it needs to be packed and distributed to the branches. All of that's where the 4 to 5 days come in, where the cash needs to be available of this 1.6 billion before the first day of payment, so that we are ensured that that money is at the branches on 8 o'clock the day that starts. So that's where the media article has again distorted the facts. So yes, we do require that funding, but that's then repaid on the first day back when National Treasury funds the money into via Postbank into SAPO's account. So I hope that clarifies it. If it doesn't, maybe acting CEO, when you come in, you can then elaborate a bit further. I'm hoping I'm not confusing the members with my explanation. I'm just looking at we have answered on the blue label matter, but I'll ask the acting CEO and maybe the acting COO again to maybe reiterate on the blue label matter. Again, from my side, I have not seen the blue label being presented to the board in relation to the 350 grants. We have not seen that as being presented, and there is a fraud case opened with regards to the letter that the Honourable Mackenzie has been referring to. So again, I'll allow the COO to answer on that. I'm just going through my notes to see if I've missed anything. Maybe acting CEO, if you want to come in, and then I'll clarify if there's something that I've missed. Thank you.
Thank you. I will answer some of the questions that haven't been answered by the chair. And I also noted that some of the questions Minister answered, which related to shareholder. And from my side, I will be assisted by the acting COO. We also have the acting GE strategy on the line to answer to some of the operational questions. Just to clarify the pre-funding issue with regard to the speculation that has been in the media, as indicated, the articles were more distorting the information, where it was more creating panic to the beneficiaries that they wouldn't be paid, which we have addressed that through our press release and also responding to the relevant media. What I want to reiterate up front is that from the onset, when the contract for SASSA grants was given to SAPO, it was based on the relationship that SAPO has with Postbank, which is interdependent. So there are aspects that Post Bank would fulfill, and there are aspects that SAPO would fulfill. So one of the arrangements that SAPO has with the Post Bank is for Post Bank to assist with regard to the pre-funding with regard to the amount that would be required. And then obviously, because there need to be document flow and governance processes followed through, given the fact that the Post Bank is the bank, then there will be communication that get communicated between SAPO and Post Bank. So what the media did was just distort information where the letter correspondence between SAPO and Post Bank was then leaked to the media. But then when one read the story and the storyline, things were not aligned. Obviously, in terms of the monies that SAPO and Post Bank would owe each other, yes, there has been incident where SAPO has utilized the Post Bank funds, but those will be recorded. Those will be recorded in terms of what amount Post Bank would owe. Sorry, not Post Bank. Which amount would SAPO owe Post Bank? And then in terms of building on the pre-funding going forward. So currently we do have a corporate agreement between SAPO and Post Bank, which mainly manages the overall business relationship. And we are also in the process of entering into the service level agreement between Post Office and SAPO. This is to also manage the requirement of the pre-funding matter in this regard. And then there was a question asked with regard to Green Rod as to how they're involved as far as this process. What I can clarify is up to this point, the arrangement has been between SAPO and Post Bank. Green Rod wasn't involved. And then if there are any requirements for Green Rod to be involved, obviously that would have to follow the governance processes. So I will allow the CFO just to clarify if there hasn't been. But to my knowledge, currently, as the payment of grants are concerned, the relationship has always been between SAPO and the Post Office. There was a question asked about the blue label. I happen to have been present in the PC meeting last month when the question was asked, and the acting COO actually did respond to say that SAPO doesn't have any contractual agreement with blue label. There was a question asked with regard to the mail operation, to say that the presentation is saying nothing about the mail, what about the backlog and all that. In the presentation, we were more covering things that would be additional things that are we doing out of the ordinary. So with regard to mail, yes, mail is still critical in terms of the improvement. We're looking at how we can improve the business operations, and then priority is still given in terms of making sure that domestic and international parcels are delivered. On the backlog, I can give the stats as far back as July. In July, it was recorded like about 5.3 million. What was recorded as the backlog at end of July, about 12 million, and then as at end of September, we were sitting at 5.9 million. And then currently on October, so the figures fluctuated from 5.7 million. And then today, the record that I got is that we're sitting at 3 million. So we are working at clearing that backlog if one were to consider what the amount was from July. The question, I think the other one was more a comment with regard to the bailouts that we requested from Treasury. And then there was a question about the buildings as to what is happening with regard to that. Within the building portfolio, buildings are used for different purposes. We have the mail centers, we've got the post offices and other buildings. So in terms of the quick wins, because I had a member ask as to, is there something that can be done now? We are looking at, if we looking at the disposal of non-core. So there have been 99 properties that have been identified as non-core. And of those, the one that we're looking at in kind of disposing soon, given how advanced the negotiations has been, is the JDA building. And I think we have done the market valuations in that regard, so that should be one of the quick wins. But the other buildings are also looked at in the same processes. And also, given the cash flow situation, what we are also looking at is that in some of the buildings where we can derive revenue, when we prioritize the maintenance, is to prioritize those buildings that we can immediately lease. Like as you spend money on the maintenance, but then we know that they are a rental that we can obtain. So the COO can go into the specific with regard to those buildings. There was also a question asked with regard to e-commerce. On that, in the bigger scheme of things, yes, SAPO has been identified by the Universal Postal Union to be a hub in the SADC with regard to being the e-commerce hub. We do have the operational projects that we are currently working on. And then in terms of the immediate status quo, the GE strategy will respond to that. I'm just looking at the other questions that might not have been asked. Minister touched on the performance of SAPO in the past and reference to the period, especially when Mark Barnes was at the post office. I'm not going to be talking about Mark Barnes as a person. I'm just going to talk about the overall performance of SAPO over the previous 3 years. If we're looking at 2016-17, 2017-18, and 2019-20. So if one looks, because obviously there has been some cash injection that government made to SAPO in the past, which was also to support the turnaround. So it has been a challenge for SAPO to turn around, because when one look at the net loss for the overall years, SAPO has been recording over $1 billion, like about $1 billion net loss on an annual basis, which then led to the disqualification in terms of being registered as a bank controlling company. So those were based more on the financial performance of SAPO at the time. There was also a question with regard to the, although it was more of a comment, of the collective agreement. Yes, due to the cash flow situation, SAPO was not in a position to meet those agreements. And currently we are having ongoing discussion with Labour in terms of how we can address some of the challenges given the cash flow situation. And also in terms of, because we do recognize that Labour is a very critical stakeholder in terms of SAPO turning around, because if everybody put their hands on the deck, then it will be quicker for SAPO to make a turn. So those engagements are ongoing. There was also a question about procurement during COVID with regard to the COVID-related expenses. In that regard, the COO would respond, but I can confirm that obviously SAPO had to acquire some PPEs because of COVID. Then there was a question. I think the other questions were answered by the chair. And then if I left some, the acting COO and acting GE strategy will be in a position to answer. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, with the Honorable Minister, DM, and the committee members, I'm Refile Kekana, I'm trying to switch on. Kekana, the acting COO at SAPO. I'll answer some of the questions that were left behind. I think the first one was on the cashless ATMs. as we stand, we have completed the development of this. What is currently outstanding was we needed to comply with what we call the Payment Association of South Africa compliance. We have done everything. The only thing remaining now is the internal integration with Postbank. We are dealing with how the monies will move around. And then if we get that correct and we supply to PASA, we'll be able to roll out these cashless ATMs to all the PASA shops where the people are actually based. And this will be to the SMMEs that are part of the small medium development plan and registered there. So they will benefit the SMEs more than anyone else. And then in terms of the e-commerce, during the lockdown, the team worked hard to actually build up a model of what we call e-mall. That's where we'll have sellers registering themselves on a platform and be able to sell their wares on that platform. We've completed it. We're actually just waiting to roll it out and launch it, of which our date, I think we're discussing with the ministry to coordinate, should be the first week of November. So we're almost done on that. And then there was a question on the IT systems. Do we own them, or do we have them being managed by other system operators? SAPO has got what you call proprietary softwares like your Microsoft SAP and all that, of which we don't own, but we obviously rent and have contracts with them. And then we have actually even in-house built solutions. So it's a hybrid of the two. And then there was a question on the security. As mentioned, there are different levels of security. If you think about it, there's what you call physical security at the branches. That's where SAPO has contracted the number of security companies depending on the province they are in. And we are definitely assisted by SASSA. Those are the static security. And then we've got inside the branches what you call time delay devices, where if there's money overnight, we leave it over there. If it's disturbed, it will actually die the money and make it useless. Unfortunately, these devices have not been rolled out to all the branches. There's still a rollout plan on that. So in some of these branches where they are not, and there's a lot of overnight cash, yes, we sometimes get these robberies being committed there. And then the other one was it was to do with the PPEs during the lockdown. Yes, we had to, like any other entity, go into emergency procurement where we had to, unfortunately, bypass the SEM process. So far, there's been one complaint that was raised by a whistleblower, but I understand our internal SNI is working on that. But there's never been any other hearing report on that. And then the backlog, I think it was covered. And then on the UPU, whether we are on the blacklist or not, we are not on the blacklist. Everyone is accepting a mail and they are exchanging the mail with us. I think I've covered everything that I needed to cover, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it the CFO to come now? Just check if there's another person to speak from SAP. If not, okay, I see Tusio.
Thank you. I think we answered all the questions. There was a question about G4 S and fidelity. With regard to that court case ruling, it has been given to our legal services just to ensure that SAPO comply with the ruling. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I do see that we still have a few minutes that we can utilize, members.